How's it going, my car dudes? Liam here, and today I have a bit of a different video. In front of me we have two very different cars, but if you look more in depth you'll find that they're actually fairly similar. So today I want to do a comparison video between this 1999 BMW E39 520i and this 2000 Mitsubishi Verada 3.5 Xi. So in this video I'm going to be comparing these cars on 4 criteria: styling, interior quality, practicality, and lastly, driving feel. Now, before I get flamed in the comment section for people telling me why am I comparing a BMW to an old Mitsubishi, I am not saying that the Mitsubishi is as good as an E39. I'm using the E39 as a benchmark, but I want this video to show how well the Verada stacks up against its German competitor of the day. Now, you might think that I've gone crazy to compare some old Mitsubishi to an E39, a car that many people consider to be the greatest BMW ever made. And maybe I am, but hear me out. These two cars are way more similar than you'd think. They were bought by the same kind of people, at least here in Sri Lanka. The first owner of my car was a director at a well-known garment company, and the first owner of the Verada was a director at one of the biggest conglomerates in Sri Lanka. So surely they must have some similarities. They were both built around the same time too. The E39 ran from 1996 until 2003, and the Verada ran from 1996 all the way until 2005. I also want to mention that throughout this video you will hear me use the phrase "for what it is" towards the Verada. The phrase means that Mitsubishi isn't well known for building big luxury cars to compete with the Germans. So for them to even have a crack at it is respectable in my eyes. I have an in-depth review of both of these cars on my channel if you'd like to find out more about them. In terms of styling, the BMW E39 is a very understated car. Classic BMW. You take one good look at it and immediately know what it is. BMW took a more evolutionary design approach when replacing the E34. A little more curvy, less slab-sided panels, and an overall more modern design that was more in line with their flagship at the time, the E38. I personally fitted an M-Tech bumper and some 18-inch racing dynamic wheels, and it made a world of a difference on this car. BMW shifted away from this design language after the production of the E60 started in 2004, which many people dislike. Still, better than whatever crap this is. Overall, the E39 has that unmistakable BMW-ness in the way that it looks. You see one, you know one. It looks good, and it has a road presence that not many other sedans of this time can match. As for the Verada, Mitsubishi was very bold in their styling choices. It has a very retro 90s look that I love. You can see that they really tried. It's boxy in some places, curvy in the others. I mean, look at those funky wing mirrors. And let's not forget the wannabe kidney grills on the front. Maybe it's trying too hard to look as stylish as its European competitors. I use the term competitors lightly. This car was really built to compete with cars like the Holden Commodore and the Ford Falcon of its time. However, it does get points for pillarless doors. That's pretty cool. More so, I admire how the Verada looks basically nothing like the rest of the vehicles in Mitsubishi's range. The E39 was in line with BMW's range at the time, with similarities between it, the E38, and the E46. So the next category I'll be comparing these two cars will be practicality. Both of these cars are fairly big even by today's standards, so naturally you would expect them to have big boots, and that they do. The E39 has a boot capacity of 530 liters. If only I had the engine to match that number. The Verada has the E39 slightly beat on boot space with a capacity of 590 liters. Additionally, the Verada also has a rear seat trunk pass-through, but the E39 did have the option of 60-40 split folding rear seats on the sedan models, whereas to my knowledge the Verada didn't have such an option. Alright, now we'll compare rear leg space. Wide opening doors on the E39. This front seat is put in a position that I would be comfortable driving in. I'm about 6'2.5", 6'3", give or take. Leg space, it could be better. If I'm honest, my knees are up against the seat. They are scallops, but if I relax a little bit, it's not too bad. I have space to put my feet underneath the seat and all that. Headroom is okay too. It's pretty good. Shoulder room is all right. We do have rear AC vents back here. You can adjust whether it's warm or cold, as well as a rear armrest. And I also have rear seat back pockets. Coming to the Verada. Also pretty wide opening doors. Again, this seat is in a position that I would be comfortable in. I'm 6'2.5", 6'3". And honestly, I can say the leg space is actually a bit better back here. I have a little bit more knee room. I have a little more space to sort of stretch my legs out. So I have a bit of better, the thigh support is a bit better. Headroom is better in the E39, but it's not too bad. Shoulder room is all right as well. We have a rear armrest with 2 cup holders. And also seat back pockets, but no storage in the doors. Next up, we'll compare the interior design and quality. Starting off with the E39, and the design is very German. All the controls are directed towards the driver and everything is exactly where you would expect it. From the radio to the HVAC controls, you could get in this car for the first time and within 5 minutes know where everything is and know what each button does. Most E39s come with dual zone climate control, with the exception of a few that came with these horrible dials. Yeah, cursed image. The seats are also quite comfortable and supportive, pretty adequate for most journeys. Quality-wise, the 39 is very well built. Wood trim complements the abundant soft-touch materials, even with felt-lined door pockets. It should be mentioned that after nearly 25 years, this interior has held up really well, with minimal cracking in the wood trim and few interior rattles. The only evidence of severe sun damage would be the radio display, which can be fixed by replacing the ribbon. And now on to the Verada. The interior design is undoubtedly somewhat upmarket, especially by Japanese standards. Much like the E39, there is an abundance of wood, leather, and soft-touch materials scattered all across the interior. Single zone climate control on this car, however, you can't really look past these pretty gauges. Very Lexus-esque and way more modern looking than the E39's relatively simple gauge cluster. I also have to give the edge to the Verada in terms of seat comfort. These seats are so much more supportive, plush, and I would argue that these would be more comfortable on a long journey. In terms of interior quality for the Verada, much like the E39, it has soft touch materials all around with few plastic feeling pieces of trim, which I can forgive. Also like the E39, the interior has held up relatively well, with minimal cracks and rattles after nearly a quarter of a century. The most severe sign of wear and tear, like the E39, is the display on the dash. Before we go to our final category of driving manners, let's do a quick startup of each of these cars and see what they have under the bonnet. This particular E39 has 179,320 kilometers. It is mated to a 5-speed automatic transmission with Steptronic. This particular 520i has BMW's M52 TUB20 2-liter straight 6, which produces 148 brake horsepower and 140 foot-pounds of torque. It has a 0 to 100 time of 10.2 seconds and a top speed of 226 kilometers per hour. Onto the Verada. This Verada has just 100,791 kilometers on it. Very nice. This one is mated to a 4-speed automatic transmission with Tiptronic shifting and a backup camera. This Verada has Mitsubishi's 6G74 3.5 liter V6, which produces 197 brake horsepower and 221 foot-pounds of torque. It has a 0 to 100 time of 8 seconds flat and a top speed of 210 kilometers per hour. And with that, let's take him for a drive. You're gonna see my horrible automotive presenter journalist skills kicking in now. Okay, so here we are driving the E39, and as you would expect of a BMW from this era, it's very silky smooth, very nice. Obviously this one is just a 2 liter, so it's not gonna have that much power. Like I said, it's only making 148 horsepower. But for what it is, it's a fairly big, heavy car. It handles pretty damn well. The steering is very precise. If I'm honest, there's actually more steering feel than my dad's Porsche Cayman, but that's probably just down to that being electric and this is hydraulic. Obviously, like I said, it's a bit slow, but nothing quite like a Beamer. Well, the body roll, yeah, there's a little bit of body roll, which is what you'd expect of a bit of a boat, but it's so smooth and so comfy. Handles really well. It has that sporty essence that BMWs are very well known for, and if you are a bit of an enthusiastic driver, one of these with a bigger engine will not disappoint. I think the saying goes is that if you want luxury, you go Mercedes. If you want sportiness, you go BMW. If you want a bit of both, you can't go wrong with Audi. And I think that stays true because BMW, in my experience, has always had the more sportier edge compared to the other 2 German manufacturers. Okay, so driving the Verada, immediately the one major difference I notice is that there's a lot more power. You obviously feel that with that extra 1.5 cc, 1500 cc. It's just so much more effortless to overtake. Like you can just downshifts and it goes, and it really pulls, which is amazing. I haven't properly driven a 2.5 or a 3 liter E39, so I can't comment on how those feel, but obviously the 2 liter, that is the car's Achilles heel. It is very slow. In terms of driving prowess, now look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this car drives as good as an E39 because 1, I will get flamed in the comments, and 2, well, it doesn't. They have their own driving characteristics. This car is more of a lazy cruiser, just likes to sit on the highway, and one could argue that the E39 is like that as well, and maybe it is, but it definitely has more of a sporty essence to it compared to, you know, this Japanese Aussie sedan. But the ride quality, it's very, very comfortable, very similar to the E39. It doesn't iron out bumps as good as the E39 does, but it still does, you know, admirably. Obviously, it doesn't drive like a BMW, but it drives really, really well for what it is. And I think if you are a bit of an enthusiast, if you are a bit of an enthusiastic driver, this car will not disappoint because it is practical, it is relatively quick for what it is. It has tons of space for you, your friends, and your luggage, and it's relatively reliable. The only issue with this particular car, in this case comparing E39 to Verada, is that the parts for this car will be an absolute pain to come by because they don't make this car anymore, and it was primarily made for the Australian market, so to find parts in Australia will be a pain. Whereas the E39, there's a fair amount of E39s here. There's about, I think, 70, 80 E39s here if I'm not mistaken, whereas Veradas there's only about 12 as far as I know. So obviously these are much more rare than E39s. Does that make them, you know, any worse? Probably not. Them being rare, I think, is mostly down to the fact that they have a much bigger engine. Nobody really bought these. But driving this car, it's a very nice car to drive. It's basically, the E39 does everything this car does, just a little better, which is to be expected because it's a much more it's from a much more reputable car brand that has that is known to build, you know, the ultimate driving machine. Overall, as an overall package, does the Verada stack up very well against the E39? Yes, absolutely it does. If I was a big company executive in the early 2000s and my boss threw me the keys to a 3.5 liter Verada, Needless to say, I would not be disappointed because this is definitely some car for what it is. That Cyclone V6, it doesn't disappoint. Mitsubishi knew how to make a good V6 back in the day. So to sum up, is the Verada as good as an E39? Well, no. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and tell you that it's as good as an E39 and you should buy one over an E39. That's not the case. But does that mean the Verada is a bad car? Absolutely not. It's fantastic. Mitsubishi Australia really went all out when designing the Verada and also the later 380, which I personally think is a cracking car. While it may not match the E39 in terms of styling or driving prowess, it more than makes up for it in terms of rarity and cool factor. I still remember the first time I saw this car, I actually had to do a double take because I had never seen one before, and I thought it was actually pretty cool for what it is. Call me boring if you want, but I personally think it's pretty cool. So again, is the Verada as good as an E39? No, but it does a pretty good job trying to keep up with it, and I respect it for that. Well guys, that sort of sums up this comparison between these two different and not so different vehicles. My E39 520i and this Mitsubishi Verada 3.5. As always, let me know what you guys think of the review and leave some suggestions of cars I should review in the comment section below. Thanks for watching guys, take care.